Very good. Namaskar. Okay. Let us begin with the prayer. Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grananti Te Bhurida Jana. Om. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In the Bengali edition, is page 140, and the chapter is Sri Ramakrishna Bhakta Sanghe Dakshineshwar Mandire O Balaram Mandire Pratham Parichet, page 140. Bengali book. Nandan? Yeah. Very good. In the English edition, it's page 182, at the middle of that page, 182, February 25, 1883. The first part of this chapter we did last time, so we'll continue from this new February 25th date. After his noon meal, the master conversed with the devotees. Ram, Kedar, Nityagopal, M, and others had arrived from Calcutta. Rakal, Harish, Latu, and Hazra were living with the master. Mr. Chowdhury, who had 3 or 4 university degrees and was a government officer, was also present. He had recently lost his wife and had visited the master several times for peace of mind. Master to Ram and other devotees. Devotees like Rakal, Narendra, and Bhavanath may be called Nitya Siddhas. Their spiritual consciousness has been awake since their very birth. They assume human bodies only to impart spiritual illumination to others. Nitya Siddhas, ever perfect souls. There is another class of devotees known as Kripa Siddha. That is to say, those on whom the grace of God descends all of a sudden and who at once attain his vision and knowledge. Such people may be likened to a room that has been dark 1,000 years, which, when a lamp is brought into it, becomes light immediately, not little by little. That is, Kripasiddhas are very rare, exceptional. Suddenly illumination come. That means they had done the preparation before in the previous birth, uh, which is not known in the present birth. It appears to us that all of a sudden he became illumined, but the preparation must have been done before in the earlier births. Those who lead a householder's life should practice spiritual discipline. They should pray eagerly to God in solitude. To Mr. Chowdhury, God cannot be realized through scholarship. Who indeed can understand the things of the Spirit through reason? No, all should strive for devotion to the lotus feet of God. God cannot be realized through scholarship. Scholarship is, Shankaracharya was himself the greatest scholar, and he wrote commentaries on all the Prasthanatrayam on the Vedanta Sutras, Brahma Sutras, and all the Upanishads, major Upanishads, and the Gita, and numerous other works like Viveka Chudamani. He himself has repeatedly said that mere scholarship of the scriptures is of no use. It may bring worldly benefits, fame, and some monetary rewards, recognition, but it does not bring liberation. He has clearly stated that in several places. The Viveka Chodamani, which some of you studied with Swamiji earlier, there are several verses. In one verse, he says, Vagvai Shabda Jari Shastra Vyakhyan Kaushalam Vaidushyam Vidusham Tadvad Bhuktaye Natu Muktaye. Shankara says, very nice poetry also. Vagvai means flowing language, very impressive, torrential flow of words. Shabda Jari, Jari means stream, non-stop. Shastra Vyakhyana Kaushalam. Shastra means scriptures. Vyakhyana means interpretation. Kaushala means proficiency. A person may be very proficient in giving explanations of all the scriptural statements, pointing out their various meanings, grammar, and all those things. Scholars do these things. This kind of scholarship, this is for bhuktaye. For bhukti means worldly enjoyment. He'll bring some benefits. The people recognize him, he gets titles, Vedanta Shuromani, Tarka Chodamani, like that. Titles are conferred on such a person. Worldly fame and rewards will come, but it does not bring Natu Muktaye. It will not bring mukti, liberation. So, like this, several verses are there in the Viveka Chodamani. And elsewhere, Sri Ramakrishna explained with a parable the futility of mere book knowledge. That parable you must have all heard, I'm sure they all know it. The scholar was traveling in a boat, crossing the river, and several other people were there. And he was he was bragging about his scholarship. He was asking all other people, have you studied Patanjala? Have you studied Sankhya? Have you studied this and that? And they were ordinary people. They don't know any of these things. So they said, sir, we don't know all those things. And in the middle of the river, there was a storm, and the boat began to toss sideways. And all the other people, they thought this, everybody thought the boat will sink, and they all jumped into the river and swam. And before they did, they asked him, the scholar, do you know how to swim? The scholar said, no, I know Patanjala, all those things. Your Patanjala will not help you now. That scholarship it is useful. You have to study scriptures. In the Upanishads, it is there is much emphasis on study of scripture, Swadhyaya. And the Taittiriya Upanishad, the teacher gives this instruction: one should never refrain from study of scriptures. Swadhyaya anma pramadaha. Repeatedly, 8, 9 times that statement comes. But it also says, the same Upanishad also says that mere study of scriptures is of no use. What the scriptures do is like it tells us what is the goal of life and how to achieve it. Scriptures are like recipe books. The recipe book tells us what ingredients are required to assemble and how to process them to prepare a particular dish. And that's all the recipe book does. If you keep on reading recipe book and don't do anything, there will be nothing, no dish to eat. We have to follow the instructions given in the recipe book. Otherwise, it is a mere scholarship is not of much use. This is what Sri Ramakrishna said many times. God cannot be realized through scholarship. Who indeed can understand the things of the spirit through reason? No, all should strive for devotion to the lotus feet of God. Devotion is what he was emphasizing. Okay. Infinite are the glories of God. How little can you fathom them? Can you ever find out the meaning of God's ways? Inscrutable. Bhishma was none other than one of the 8 Vasus. Vasus are a class of beings, Siddhas, Vasus, Yakshas, and they are higher than ordinary human beings. And eight of them are there 12 Adityas, 49 Marus, and 8 Vasu. These are all described in the Bhagavad Gita in the 10th chapter. So Bhishma was one of them, one of the 8 Vasus. But even he shed tears on his bed of arrows. He said, "How astonishing! God Himself is the companion of the Pandava brothers, and still there is no end to their troubles and sorrows. Who can ever understand the ways of God? A man thinks, I have practiced a little prayer and austerity, so I have gained a victory over others. But victory and defeat lie with God. I have seen a prostitute dying in the Ganges and retaining consciousness to the end. The note here says, dying in the Ganges while retaining full consciousness is considered by the Hindus an act of great spiritual merit and the result of pious living. This Bhishma was crying while lying on the bed of arrows, waiting for the Uttarayana to second half of the year to begin, when the sun begins to move in the northern part of the sky. The belief is that if we leave the body during that half of the year, then we go to heaven or higher destinations. If we die in the Dakshinayana, when the sun is in the southern half of the sky, it is not so good. See, Puranic, in Purana, they have all these kinds of things. But for seekers of God, it doesn't matter when we die, where we die, how we die, nothing matters. And he was waiting for that. At that time, he was crying. Then Arjuna, Yudhishthira, and Krishna, they were all visiting him. And Arjuna, it seems, asked, why Bhishma is crying? He's such a great hero, one of the 8 verses. Why he should be crying? Krishna says, you don't know why he's crying. Then they asked Bhishma, why are you crying? Are you in pain? He said, no, I'm not. I'm not crying because of pain. I'm crying because I cannot understand the glories of God. Krishna, the Lord Himself, was with the Pandavas all the time, round the clock, but still there was no end to their suffering. In spite of being the Lord Himself being with them all the time, protecting them. So no one can fathom the the glories of God. That's why I'm crying. This is infinite are the glories of God. How little can you fathom them? Can you ever find out the meaning of God's ways? Bhishma was none other than one of the 8 Vasus, but even he had tears on his bed of arrows. He said, how astonishing! God Himself is the companion of the Pandava brothers, and still there is no end to their troubles and sorrows. Who can ever understand the ways of God? A man thinks, I have practiced a little prayer and austerity, so I have gained a victory over others. But victory and defeat lie with God. I have seen a prostitute dying in the Ganges and retaining consciousness to the end. Mr. Chowdhury, how can one see God? Master, not with these eyes. God gives one divine eyes, and only then can one behold Him. God gave Arjuna divine eyes so that he might see his universal form. The note says an allusion to the 11th chapter of the Gita. When Bhagavan Sri Krishna revealed his cosmic form, he granted special eyes to Arjuna. Tadami Divya Chakshu, he says. Then, with those special eyes, Arjuna could see the cosmic form, Divya Chakshum Dadami. Your philosophy is mere speculation. Is Sri Ramakrishna telling that Mr. Chaudhary. Your philosophy is mere speculation. It only reasons. God cannot be realized that way. God cannot remain unmoved if you have raga bhakti, that is, love of God with passionate attachment to Him. Do you know how fond God is of His devotees' love? It is like the cow's fondness for fodder mixed with oil cake. The cow gobbles it down greedily. Raga Bhakti means pure devotion, as described by Narada. Sri Ramakrishna makes reference to Narada's way of devotion several times in the Gospel. In short, pure devotion means not seeking anything from God in return. Ordinarily, people worship God with some motive. The four kinds of devotees worship me in the Gita. Sri Krishna says the first one is Artha. Arti means some kind of suffering, distress. Sarvasyarte Hare Devi Narayane Namostute we chant in the evening prayer from Chandi. Artha means a person who is in some kind of distress, family problem, money problem, job problems, so many difficulties. And such a person prays to God for relief from that problem that is going through. Sri Krishna says it is okay to ask God for something. He does not say it is wrong in the Gita, 7th chapter. He says, Udara sarve evaite. All these people who pray to me with different motivations, they are all noble people. Udaraha. However, of the four kinds of people who pray to me, Jnani is the best. Jnani, Atmaiva, Me, Matam. I am Jnani myself. There's no difference between a Jnani. Jnani is Bhakti, they all merge. There is only in the end, jnana bhakti become one. If you jnana, you have bhakti. If you have bhakti, you have jnana. In the beginning, they appear to be different. Paths are different. So we think of them as different. No. Then it says, what are the other people who pray to God with different motivations? Artha jignasu. Jnana means knowledge. Jignasa means desire for knowledge. Here, knowledge means knowledge of God, not worldly knowledge. A person who is seeking God, he sincerely prays to God, O Lord, reveal your true nature to me. He is a devotee. That kind of prayer is good. That is good desire to have to know God. The third kind of person who prays with a different motive is artharthi. Artha means any object in general. Artha also means money or anything that of that nature money can buy. A person does not have enough money, does not have a job, a person does not have a child, a young couple, they were praying for a child, like that one. A person does not have a place to stay, is praying for a place to stay. These are all arthas. Praying for something that they don't have, which they think they need, with the hope that if that missing thing is supplied, life will be better, happier. That's why they pray to God, seeking that missing thing. These are arthartis. These three kinds of people who pray for something, whose prayer is motivated by some desire, asking God for something, they're okay. They are devotees nonetheless. They have devotion to God. Even to if you worship God with any motive, seeking something, it is still a devotion, but not of the highest type. The highest kind of devotion, parabhakti, which Sri Ramakrishna is referring to here, parabhakti, para means supreme. Supreme devotion means praying to God out of love only and not seeking anything. Even if a person needs something, even if a person is in some kind of trouble, that person with pure devotion does not seek anything from God. The Lord knows what I need. If you seek something, you are tying God's hands. God knows better than I know what my needs are. So best thing is to leave it to the Lord. Let him do what is good for me. Why should I ask, specify this or that? Then that may not be even good for me. I don't know what is good for me. Today it may appear something very interesting, nice to have, but when it is actually granted, I may repent. Why did I ask for it? Why did I get into this one? That happens. So it's best to leave to the Lord. Whatever in whatever condition God keeps us, wherever God keeps us, there we should take his name and remain like the kitten. Wherever the mother cat keeps the baby cat kitten, the cat stays there until the mother comes and puts her in some other place. That is pure devotion. How can one see God? Not with these eyes. God gives one divine eyes, and only then can one behold him. God gave Arjuna divine eyes so that he might see his universal form. Your philosophy is mere speculation. It only reasons. God cannot be realized that way. God cannot remain unmoved if you have raga bhakti, pure devotion, that is love of God with passionate attachment to Him. Do you know how fond God is of His devotees' love? It is like the cow's fondness for fodder mixed with oil cake. The cow gobbles it down greedily. Raga bhakti is pure love of God, a love that seeks God alone and not any worldly end. Prahlada had it. Suppose you go to a wealthy man every day, but you seek no favor of him. You simply love to see him. If he wants to show you favor, you say, "No, sir, I don't need anything. I came just to see you." Such is the love of God for its own sake. You simply love God and don't want anything from Him in return. Saying this, the Master sang this song here. Though I am never loath to grant salvation, I hesitate indeed to grant pure love. Whoever wins pure love surpasses all. He is adored by men. He triumphs over the three worlds. This is this song represents Sri Krishna's words. He continued, the gist of the whole thing is that one must develop passionate yearning for God and practice discrimination and renunciation. This is something, I may say, unique to Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. Other teachers of great teachers of devotion like Prahlada and Hanuman and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and other teachers of devotion, they taught devotion. But Sri Ramakrishna added, invariably would always add, develop vairagya, discrimination between the real and the unreal, which according to common belief is practiced by seekers of knowledge, self-knowledge, jnanis. Jnanis have to practice vairagya, viveka and vairagya, sadhana chatushtayam we studied in the Viveka Chudamani. But devotees have to do it too. Narada says it indirectly, but not directly as Sri Ramakrishna has said. Describing pure devotion, Narada says, Sana kamaya mana nirodha rupatvat, one aphorism. That means nirodha means controlling controlling our mind, controlling our desires, and giving up desires. He refers to that in one aphorism, but Sri Ramakrishna makes it very clear and repeatedly gives that instruction that seekers of God, even if they are following the path of devotion, they must practice discrimination and renunciation, viveka and vairagya. Mr. Chaudhary, sir, is it not possible to have the vision of God without the help of a guru? Then Sri Ramakrishna says, Master, Satchidananda himself is the guru. At the end of the Shavasadhana, just when the vision of the Ishta is about to take place, the Guru appears before the aspirant and says to him, Behold, there is your Ishta. Saying this, the Guru merges in the Ishta. He who is the Guru is also the Ishta. The Guru is the thread that leads to God. Women perform a ritualistic worship known as the Anantavarata, the object of worship being the infinite. Ananta means infinite. But actually, the deity worshipped is Vishnu. In him are the infinite forms of God. In South India, maybe in other parts of India too, on a certain day in a year, the ladies perform a special worship called Ananta Padmanabha Vrata, Vishnu. Ananta Padmanabha is Vishnu. There they worship the Lord Vishnu for devotion and for the well-being of their husband and family, not seeking anything for themselves but for the well-being of their husband and their family. Ananta Padmanabha Vrata. He who is the Guru is also the Ishta. Sachidananda himself is the Guru. And then it says at the end of the Shavasadhana means a certain type of tantric practice where the seeker seeks a dead body and sits down dead body and does meditation. Ordinarily, we not familiar with that kind of thing. And then that's a kind of spiritual practice. At the end of that Shava sadhana, Shava means dead body. Just when the vision of the Ishta is about to take place, the Guru appears before the aspirant and says to him, "Behold, there is your Ishta." This sentence, "Behold, there is your Ishta," reminds me of a very interesting incident. There was a Swami Apurvanandiji Maharaj. He was Holy Mother's disciple. He was in Varanasi for a long time, and for some time he was in Bhuvaneshwar. He was in Varanasi, he was transferred to Bhuvaneshwar as the head Swami, and then after some time he was transferred back to Varanasi. And when he was in Bhuvaneshwar, I had the great good fortune of seeing him. I saw him once in Varanasi also. So when he was initiated by the Holy Mother, this is what she said to him. He at those days there was no elaborate ritual for initiation. She said he's asked for initiation. His name was Kshitendra, I think. He was more attached to Swami Shivananda. Swami Shivananda Mahaprabhu told him to go to her Holy Mother and seek initiation from her. He did. And mother said, "Come tomorrow, I'll give you Diksha." So next morning, this young man went and she made him sit down next to him and did puja and gave him the mantra and instructions. And then she said, pointing to the wall, "Look there, your Ishta is there." Exactly what he said. "See, your Ishta is there." And he looked at the wall, there was his Ishta Devata. It probably, he does not say what the Ishta Devata was. It probably was a Shakti form, Divine Mother form, and it was their living presence. She showed, "Look, dear Ishta is there." That's what Holy Mother could give the grant the vision of the God, Ishta Devata, as by will to anyone if she wanted. How, he said, "Behold, there is your Ishta." Saying this, the Guru merges in the Ishta. He who is the Guru is also Ishta. The Guru is the thread that leads to God. Women perform that we read Anantavarata. To Ram and other devotees, if you ask me which form of God you should meditate upon, I should say, fix your attention on that form which appeals to you most. But know for certain that all forms are the forms of one God alone. This is the great point. Some other people, they believe that the form of God which they worship, that's the only way to worship God. But in Vedanta, in Hinduism, we believe that all names and forms are names and forms of one divinity only. So that way, people have the freedom to worship God in any way they like, using any form, any name, their choice. There should not be any quarrel. Although some people do in Hinduism also. There are fanatics in every religion. Um, if you to Ram and other devotees, if you ask me which form of God you should meditate upon, I should say fix your attention on that form which appeals to you most. But know for certain that all forms are the forms of one God alone. This is a very great point. Sri Ramakrishna makes that point very often. Never harbor malice toward anyone. Shiva, Kali, and Hari are but different forms of that one. He is blessed indeed who has known all as one. Never harbor malice toward anyone. Shiva, Kali, and Hari are but different forms of that one. He is blessed indeed who has known all as one. Only if people just pay attention to this one teaching, all the fighting about religion, my religion, you converting, that will stop. But it has to happen by the grace of God. There is a poem here, song. Outwardly, he appears as Shiva's devotee, but in his heart, he worships Kali, the blissful mother. And with his tongue, he chants aloud Lord Hari's name. So he appears to be Shiva's devotee, but in his heart, he worships Kali, the blissful mother. And with his tongue, he chants the Lord Hari, Vishnu's name. So they're all different forms and names, aspects of the same one divinity. The body does not endure without a trace of lust, anger, and the like. You should try to reduce them to a minimum. This body, we have been given the body, we took upon the body ourselves because out of our own wish, because we had some of these things, some desire uh, to fulfill certain desires, need, and some good deeds we had done. We have to go through the effects of the good deeds, punya karma. Some good things happen. Some bad deeds we had done. So that effect of the bad deeds we have to go through. Some skaras are there. Prarabdha karma we call them. Because of all those things, only body embodiment happens. If the mind is absolutely pure or free from samskara, there is no need for a body to do anything. So that liberation means, repression or liberation means purifying the mind and not accumulating new samskaras. Old samskaras we cannot easily get rid of. You have to go through them, whatever is slated to happen in this life. But new samskaras, we can prevent accruing new samskaras by doing the present actions with complete detachment. If we offer all our actions to God as our offering, as our worship, then we don't have attachment to the fruits of karma. It is up to you. I've done my part, and it is up to you. Success, failure, whatever, I'm not concerned about it. No attachment to karma pala. Then you are not accruing new samskara. That means there is no need for another birth. But what about the old samskaras that we have done in the past? We have to go through them. Even there, both Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother say the intensity of suffering due to old bad samskaras, bad karma done in the past, can be greatly reduced by intense prayer. Holy Mother said if you are going to, if you tolerate the karma is such that you have to lose a hand, you will end up losing a finger. The intensity becomes less. You cannot make it zero, some trouble will be there, but greatly reduced. For that to happen, intense prayer is necessary. If you just do half an hour japa a day, it does not make that happen. Intense suffering with hours and hours with no attachment to anything. You have to sincerely pray to God, do japa, meditation. And there is a book that you all have read, Swami Chaitananda's book, Sri Sardadevi under divine play. There, Holy Mother said this to one devotee. It seemed that devotee was in some kind of a distress, and she gave him this instruction. If anyone is in serious distress and wants relief, there is a way to seek grace of God. And she gives instructions. That person must observe solitude, should not mix with people, and no conversation, minimal food, minimal engagement with the worldly things, and sit down, repeat God's name, mantra, all the time. Then she said, I will come and direct the person what to do next. She has said that one in that, it's on page, I don't remember the page, maybe 688 or something in that book. She saw the way and her divine play. She herself said how to uh, face a crisis, a serious crisis a person is in. If wants to find relief, it can be done, but it requires intense effort. So describes that one. Here say, fix your attention on that form which appeals to you more. That we read. Looking at Kedar, the master said, he is very nice. He accepts both the absolute and the relative. He believes in Brahman, but he also accepts the gods and divine incarnations in human form. In Kedar's opinion, Sri Ramakrishna was such an incarnation. Looking at Nitya Gopal, the master said to the devotees, he is in a lofty mood. To Nitya Gopal, Sri Ramakrishna says, don't go there too often. You may go once in a while. She may be a devotee, but she is a woman too. Therefore, I warn you. The sannyasi must observe very strict discipline. He must not look even at the picture of a woman. But this rule does not apply to householders. An aspirant should not associate with a woman, even though she is very much devoted to God. Remember, these instructions are given to men disciples. An aspirant should not associate with a woman, even though she is very much devoted to God. A sannyasi, even though he may have subdued his passions, should follow this discipline to set an example to householders. Worldly people learn renunciation by seeing the complete renunciation of a monk. Otherwise, they sink more and more. A sannyasi is a world teacher. So, uh, strict rules for monks and even for householders. In the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there was one of his disciples, I think his name was Harish. I don't clearly remember. Nandan Harish was his name. Huh. So he talked to a woman disciple for a little bit longer time. They had gone there for some work and did some conversation. And he came back, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very, very strict. He said, don't come to me again. You talked to that lady for so long, it was not necessary. She may be a devotee, but you should remember. And that man became repentant and begged Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to accept him. He says, no, he banished him. Very severe punishment. I don't know why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so harsh with that one individual. Very compassionate person, teacher, but he was unforgiving. That man could not see him again. Yeah, very strict punishment he gave. Now, next Friday, March 9, 1883, about 9 o'clock in the morning, the master was seated in his room with Rakhal M, and a few other devotees. It was the day of the new moon. As usual with him on such days, Sri Ramakrishna entered again and again into communion with the Divine Mother. He said to the devotees, God alone exists and all else is unreal. This is what the Upanishad says, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. God alone exists and all else is unreal. The Divine Mother has kept all deluded by her Maya. Elsewhere in the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna explains what's the meaning of unreal. Unreal means it is present in a certain state of consciousness we can see. It's not totally absent, but it is temporary, changing and comes and goes, and it's not always there. The nature of the world, there are so many theories about the world. Is it real? It is unreal. Is it dream-like reality or different views? This is one view. World is unreal because it's not always there. In deep sleep, you don't experience the world. In samadhi, people don't experience the world. Waking state, we do experience the world. And it is there in the waking state. We cannot dispute the reality of the world in when we are awake. It's very real. Pain and pleasure, all the happiness and happiness are always there. So these are different views. God alone exists and all else is unreal. The Divine Mother has kept all deluded by her Maya. Look at men. Most of them are entangled in worldliness. They suffer so much, but still they have the same attachment to woman and gold, lust and greed. The camel eats thorny shrubs, and blood gushes from its mouth. Still, it will eat thorns. While suffering pain at the time of delivery, a woman says, I shall never go to my husband again. But afterwards, she forgets. The truth is that no one seeks God. There are people who eat the prickly leaves of the pineapple and not the fruit. Devotee, sir, why has God put us in the world? Very interesting question. Why are we here suffering? Why has God put us in the world? Sri Ramakrishna. The world is the field of action, karma bhumi. Through action, one acquires knowledge. If all action is inevitable. It's a psychological, physiological imperative. We can't remain without performing action for a moment. This Gita says that in several places. Nahi kashit kshanamapi jato tishtati akarmakrit. Karmakrit means one who performs action. Akarmakrit means without performing any action. Kshanamapi, even for a short moment, no one can exist. Always action is going on in our mind, in our body. But what has to be done? You can't give up action in a physical sense. What we have to do is to give up attachment to karma phala. How to give up attachment to karma? This work I am doing, not for to gain any benefit or name or fame. I am doing it as an offering, a service with gratitude, because work is a privilege and a gift. God has given two things. He has given ability to work and opportunity to work. Both are very precious gifts. We don't think of them as gifts unless one of them is, both of them are taken away from us. So when work comes, we have to do it with gratitude. Thank you for letting me, give me opportunity to do this work, serve you in this worship of God. Thank you for letting me do this one, and I shall do it with to the best of my ability, with devotion and joy, and I'm offering it to you as my humble service. I'm not expecting any result from this one. But in modern day world, it's a little bit difficult because, as some of you working people know, there's too much work, especially in corporate and government environments. If a person leaves, they don't fill up the position. They require the remaining people to take up that load. So it becomes very difficult. Then it is, we have to bear with that one. We can talk to the people and explain, but it is there a lot of pressure to, not much time, but so much work to be done. So that is not always easy to follow, uh, but action is inevitable. The the world is the field of action. Through action, one acquires knowledge. The guru instructs the disciple to perform certain works and refrain from others. Again, he advises the pupil to perform action without desiring result. The impurity of the mind is destroyed through the performance of duty. It is like getting rid of a disease by means of medicine under the instructions of a competent physician. The guru says, uh, the guru instructs the disciple to perform certain works, prescribe certain spiritual practice, do this much japa, this puja, and refrain from others. Don't do this, don't do this. Guru guides the disciples. Again, he advises the people to perform action without desiring the result. That's the main teaching in the Gita, Karma Yoga part. Do the work, but don't expect anything in return. That's the whole gist of the Karma Yoga teaching in the Bhagavad Gita. The impurity of the mind is destroyed through the performance of duty. If we do our work with the proper attitude, offering everything that we do to God as our worship, as our seva, and not expecting anything in return, and accepting the outcome calmly, even if it is not to our liking, then what happens is mind becomes free from attachment. And other defects like anger, jealousy, all those things will go away. When the mind becomes pure, the next step is vision of God. Its vision of God is imminent. The impurity of the mind is destroyed through the performance of duty. Shankaracharya says, Chittasya Shuddhaye Karma, Chittasya Shuddhaye, for the purification of the mind, karma has to be done in the proper way, with the proper attitude. It is like getting rid of a disease by means of medicine under the instruction of a competent physician. Why doesn't God free us from the world? Oh, He will free us when the disease is cured. He will liberate us from the world when we are through with the enjoyment of woman and gold. Once a man registers his name in the hospital, He cannot run away. The doctor will not let him go away unless his illness is completely cured. Sri Ramakrishna says elsewhere, until a certain degree of satisfaction is achieved, we cannot really practice renunciation because at a certain stage in life, all a person thinks is about enjoyment. A young person in his 20s getting married, um, that person, if you teach him, all this will not be received very well, not ready. He has to go through the experience of life. He has to have children, family, then all the other things will come, sickness will come, disagreement will come, children do one thing, the other child does the other thing. When all these things are done, if the person is has a, can reflect all the experience, then he realizes how limited these things are. At one time, it appeared to be the most interesting thing I just wanted to do. But that will not go away unless you go through the experience. We have to. That's why the householder's life is prescribed for majority of people. The householder's life is a great teacher. It's a learning experience. A householder realizes, if he is a reflective person, how limited these things are, how mixed they are with all kinds of suffering. There is no pure joy in this worldly enjoyment, property, name, family, enjoyment, children. These things don't give real joy. They promise so much and deliver so little, always with some problem, always combined with some negative aspect. This is not the way to find happiness. To come to that conclusion, to develop that conviction, one has to go through the experience. For most people, some people in young age, they get the vairagya, they're already prepared. But majority people have to go through this. That's why they prescribe four ashramas: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa for those who want to go to the fourth ashrama. So grihastha ashrama is a very important place. It's like going to a school. In the grihastha ashrama, it is that a person learns the value of detachment. Without going through the experience, majority of people cannot learn. They think that this will give us happiness. So a degree of satiety is necessary. The impurity of that is, it is like getting rid of a disease by means of medicine under the instruction of a competent physician. Why does not God free us from the world? Oh, He will free us when the disease is cured. Disease of lust and greed is cured. He will liberate us from the world when we are through with the enjoyment of woman and gold. Once a man registers his name in the hospital, he cannot run away. The doctor will not let him go any away unless his illness is completely cured. During these days, Sri Ramakrishna's heart overflowed with motherly love, like the love of Yashoda felt for Krishna. So he kept Rakal with him. Rakal felt toward the master as a child feels towards its mother. He would sit leaning on the master's lap as a young child leans on its mother while sucking the breast. Rakal was thus seated by the master when a man entered the room and said that a high tide was coming in the Ganges. The master and the devotees ran to the Panchavati to see it. At the sight of a boat being tossed by the tide, Sri Ramakrishna exclaimed, "Look, look, I hope nothing happens to it." They all sat in the Panchavati. The master asked M to explain the cause of the tide. M drew on the ground the figures of the sun, moon, and earth and tried to explain gravitation, ebb tide, flood tide, a new moon, full moon, eclipse, and so forth. Master to M, stop it. I cannot follow you. It makes me dizzy. My head is aching. Well, how can they know of things so far off? You see, during my childhood, I could paint well, but arithmetic would make my head spin. I could not learn simple arithmetic. Sri Ramakrishna returned to his room with the devotees. Looking at a picture of Yashoda on the wall, he said, "It is not well done. She looks like a garland seller." So Sri Ramakrishna was very good in making images of deities from clay, drawing, painting, everything. But worldly knowledge, arithmetic, and all those things, he was not interested. So nowadays, he was asking, how can they know about things so far away? Now, with the modern Webb telescope, which is itself a million miles away from the Earth, a telescope, it can show pictures on our computer screen of distant galaxies which are thousands of light years away. That means what you are seeing on the computer screen is what was there 1,000 years ago, because light took 1,000 years to come and reach Earth. So we are going back in time also. How they are now, we don't know. That planet may be there, may not be there, but it was there 1,000 years ago. Light took 1,000 years to come and reach the Earth, and we can see the picture now. So all these things are possible, but still the mystery of creation remains. We don't know who made the creation, how it is managed, who runs it, and very little is known about it. We will stop here, and I shall say the closing prayer. ॐ निरञ्जनं नित्यमनन्तरूपं भक्तानुकम्पाधृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारं परमेशमेड्यं तं रामकृष्णं शिरसा नमामः. Om, we bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all very much. Stay well, and God willing, see you next week. Swami, I will be here next week.